And in one of the best books I've ever read on creativity, written by Anthony Brandt and David Eagleman, the writers note the importance for us to get off the path of least resistance. That this easy path, whilst extremely desirable for the brain and having been reinforced due to the necessity to think and act quickly, is the worst path for being creative. One form of advice that Brandt and Eagleman give to combat this is to proliferate options, to explore 6 different versions of a project rather than one, to follow in the footsteps of Picasso, who painted 58 variations of the painting Las Meninas. A direct example of this would come when Christopher Nolan and Hans Zimmer work on The Dark Knight, when attempting to find the sound that they felt conveyed the energy of the Joker. Before Nolan began shooting the film, he sat down with Zimmer and talked about the Joker, his motivations or the lack of it, and the way he represented no principle in the film other than pure chaos. And Nolan would also note that his Joker would be a force of chaos that is constant. It's a constant one in the film, like that of the presence of the shark in Jaws, something that kind of keeps keeping on and has the characters around it reacting to it rather than understanding and anticipating it. And with this in mind, Zimmer realized the score had to reflect this constancy, a single note of some sort, something urgent, dire, and simple. I'll read from the book here where Tom Schoen beautifully describes Zimmer spending months chiseling away at an idea, plugging away at old synthesizers, making crazy noises, and recording musicians experimentally. Razor blades on piano wire, pencils scratching tables and floors, long past the point where he should have started writing usable music cues for the film. The result was 400 tracks and 9,000 bars of music, which Zimmer put on an iPod and he gave to Nolan to listen to on a flight over to Hong Kong for the final round of location shooting. So you can see here that Zimmer has avoided taking the path of least resistance, even when he had perhaps had this deadline that probably required him to, instead opting to exhaust all possible options. And by the way, this listening experience Nolan must have had on that flight is pretty hilarious. Just the idea that Nolan would be sat on a plane listening to these horrific noises for hours on end, trying to find something that would be the right level of horrifying for the Joker. And upon touching down, Nolan says to Zimmer, "It was a pretty unpleasant experience. I have no idea exactly where the sound of the Joker is in that 9,000 bars, but you feel that it is there." The conclusion to this ends up giving the Joker theme a perfectly unpleasant single cello note that, as the book puts it, slowly slides upwards in a glissando, like a string that's being tightened and tightened without ever quite breaking. It was more tonal experiment than theme, a sound of ever greater dissonance, fusing metallic buzzing and scratching. Now you may be wondering, wait, Hans Zimmer did all of that for what was essentially a single note? This is where Charlie Chaplin's incredible quote we discovered in reading his biography comes into play, where he notes that creativity requires, and I really love this quote, elimination from accumulation as a process of finding what you want. That, to simplify, you must first expand.